When love meets courage, it doesn't just survive the fire, it becomes the light. My name is James Cooper, and I never imagined that a simple fire drill at work would change my life forever. I'm 28, a software developer at a small tech startup in Boston, living a quiet life, mostly focused on my career. That was until I met him, Michael Bennett, the firefighter who turned my entire world upside down. It was a crisp autumn morning when the fire alarm went off. Unlike our usual drills, this one wasn't planned, and this time there was real smoke coming from the server room. As everyone rushed outside, I realized I'd left my laptop on my desk. It held the code for a project I'd been working on for months. Against my better judgment, I went back inside. That's when I first saw him, Michael. He was coming up the stairs in full gear, just as I was trying to sneak back to my office. "Sir, you need to evacuate immediately," he said. Even through the mask, his voice carried a calm authority. When he lifted it off, I froze. His eyes were the deepest shade of blue I'd ever seen. "I just need to grab my laptop," I stammered, suddenly realizing how foolish it sounded. He took my arm, firm but gentle. "That's not happening. Your life is worth more than any computer." Something in his tone, concern mixed with command, made my heart race. As he guided me down the stairs, his hand stayed on my back, steady and reassuring. Outside, he insisted on checking me for smoke inhalation, even though I swore I was fine. "I'm Michael," he said, removing his helmet. "And you are?"
"James," I managed, still trying to catch my breath, though not from the smoke. "Well, James," he said with a faint smile, "promise me you won't play hero again."
"That's my job." His smile disarmed me completely. The fire turned out to be minor, just an overheated server. But as I watched him and his crew pack up, I couldn't shake the feeling that something important had just happened. A week later, I was working late when someone knocked on the glass door of our office. It was Michael. Out of uniform this time, but somehow just as striking. Jeans, a fitted t-shirt, and that same calm confidence. "We're doing follow-up safety inspections," he said. But the way he looked at me told a different story. "Mind if I take a look around?" "Of course not," I said, trying to sound steady. "I'll show you where the server room is." As we walked through the empty office, he asked about my work, really listened. When we reached the server room, he spent more time asking about my projects than checking the safety gear. "You know," he said finally, "I should probably get your number. For safety purposes, of course. In case of another incident." I laughed softly and gave it to him. "Safety first," I said. "Right," he echoed, holding my gaze just a second too long. "Safety first. I'll be in touch, James." That night I could barely focus, so when my phone buzzed an hour later, my heart nearly stopped. "Dinner tomorrow? I know a great Italian place. For safety discussions, obviously." Michael, I smiled at the screen, typing back, "Obviously." Safety is very important. The next evening, I spent way too long choosing what to wear before heading to the cozy restaurant in the North End. Michael was already there, looking even better than I remembered. Blue shirt, sleeves rolled, eyes that could stop time. "I was worried you might not come," he admitted as I sat down. "It's not exactly standard procedure to ask out someone you met during an emergency," I teased. He leaned forward slightly, his voice softer now. "I could pretend this is a routine safety consultation. But honestly, I haven't stopped thinking about you since that day." That dinner changed everything. Over plates of handmade pasta and glasses of Chianti, Michael told me about his journey to becoming a firefighter. He came from a military family, his father and older brother both Marines, but he'd chosen a different way to serve. "I wanted to help people," he said, his eyes lighting up. "But I also wanted to stay close to home. And in that moment, I knew. My quiet life had just found its spark. I found myself captivated by his passion, the way his hands moved as he described different rescue scenarios, the warmth in his voice when he talked about the people he'd helped. He wasn't the stereotype of the tough, closed-off firefighter I'd expected. "What about you?" he asked, genuinely curious. "How did you end up in software development?" I told him about my childhood fascination with computers, about building my first program at 12, and the thrill of solving problems through code. He listened so intently, asking thoughtful questions that made me feel truly seen. "You know," he said with a smile, "I love how your eyes light up when you talk about your work. It's the same way I probably look when I talk about firefighting. The evening flew by. Before we knew it, the restaurant was closing. Neither of us wanted the night to end, so we decided to take a walk along the waterfront. The October air was crisp, and when Michael noticed me shivering, he quietly slipped off his jacket and placed it over my shoulders. The gesture was simple but so sincere that it made my heart skip a beat. His jacket smelled faintly of cologne and something uniquely him. "Better?" he asked softly, his hand resting gently on my shoulder. "Much," I said, meeting his eyes under the moonlight. The way he looked at me made the world fall away for a moment. We stopped at a quiet spot overlooking the harbor, city lights reflecting off the water. "James," he said, his voice low, steady, and sincere. "I know this might sound fast, but I feel like I've known you longer than just a few days." "I know what you mean," I admitted. "It's strange, isn't it? How sometimes you just connect." He stepped closer, his hand brushing against my cheek. "Is this okay?" he whispered. I nodded, unable to find words. When he kissed me, it was soft and uncertain at first, like a question. Then it deepened, sure and warm, like the answer neither of us had known we were waiting for. His arms wrapped around me, strong and protective. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. "I've been wanting to do that since the stairwell," he said with a quiet laugh. "Even when I was making terrible decisions?" I teased. "Especially then," he replied. "You were pretty cute arguing about that laptop." We shared a few more small, sweet moments before the cold pushed us to call it a night. Michael insisted on driving me home. As we stopped outside my building, he turned to me, suddenly serious. "I want to see you again," he said. "Actually, I want to see a lot more of you. But I need you to know my job can be complicated. The hours are unpredictable, and there's always risk involved. Some people find that hard to handle." I reached out and took his hand. "Michael, I understand. And I still want to see where this goes. Unpredictable hours and all." His smile could have lit up the entire street. He walked me to my door, and before we said goodnight, he leaned in for one last, lingering kiss. As I watched him drive away, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life had just changed in the most unexpected and wonderful way. The next morning, I woke up to a text from him. "Last night was amazing. Dinner at my place tomorrow? I make a mean grilled salmon." I smiled at my phone, already counting the hours until I'd see him again. But as I got ready for work, a small worry crept in. How would this work between us, with our different schedules, our different worlds? And even more, how would his colleagues in such a traditional environment react to him dating a man? Dinner at Michael's place turned out to be the first of many quiet evenings together. His apartment was just what I'd imagined. Neat, modern, filled with memories from the firehouse. Photos of his crew lined one wall. I caught myself studying their faces, wondering what they'd think if they knew about us. Michael was an amazing cook, and as we ate grilled salmon with lemon and roasted vegetables, he told me more about life at the station. "They're like family," he said. "We spend 24-hour shifts together, share meals, face danger. It creates a bond like nothing else." He paused for a moment, pushing his food around his plate. "But there's still a lot they don't know about me." "Are you out at work?" I asked gently. He shook his head. "A few people know my Captain Dave. He figured it out a while ago. He's been supportive. But the fire service, it's changing slowly. Still, it's a traditional place." "No pressure," I said softly. "We can take this at whatever pace feels right." He smiled, eyes warm. How did I get so lucky? That night, as we sat together, I felt something shift between us. A deeper connection, built not on words, but on trust. Over the next few weeks, our rhythm fell into place. Michael would stop by after his shifts, or I'd bring dinner to the firehouse, pretending to be just a friend. We spent our evenings cooking, laughing, or talking until we fell asleep on the couch. It was simple, imperfect, and real. And for the first time, I understood what it meant to feel home. News broke of a massive fire at a downtown hotel, multiple casualties reported. My heart stopped when I saw the location. It was in Michael's district. For the next few hours, I couldn't focus on anything. I kept refreshing news sites, watching live footage, scanning every frame for a glimpse of him. Then my phone finally lit up with his name. "I'm okay," he said before I could speak. His voice was rough, strained from smoke. It was bad, but we got everyone out. I'm sorry I couldn't call sooner. Can I see you? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Come to the firehouse. My shift ends in an hour. When I arrived, Michael was still in his gear, soot streaking his face. The second he saw me, he pulled me into a tight embrace, not caring who might see. I could feel him shaking slightly, the adrenaline still running through him. We lost 2 guys today, he whispered. Not from my house, but it could have been. It could have been any of us. I held him tighter, understanding for the first time the real weight of what he carried every time he went to work. Footsteps approached. Michael tensed but didn't let go. Bennett, a voice called. We separated to find his captain, Dave, watching with concern. Everything okay? Michael straightened but kept one hand on my back. Cap, this is James, my boyfriend. The word sent a rush through me. It was the first time he'd said it out loud. Dave's expression softened. About time you introduced him properly, he said, extending a hand. Michael's been walking around with a goofy smile for months. Nice to finally meet the reason. The tension drained from Michael's shoulders. You knew? Dave chuckled. Kid, I've known you 5 years. I've never seen you this happy, his radio crackled. Take him home, Bennett. You've had a rough day. Later. At Michael's apartment, after he'd showered and changed, we lay together on the couch, the city lights flickering through the window. I'm sorry if I put you on the spot with Dave, he said quietly. I silenced him with a soft kiss. Never apologize for being honest, or for claiming me as yours. He traced my jawline with his fingers, eyes searching mine. I love you, he said suddenly. I know it might seem soon, but today reminded me life's too short to wait to say the important things. Tears stung my eyes. I love you too. That night marked a turning point. Michael slowly began being more open about us at work. Some of his colleagues were surprised, but most were supportive. Those who weren't kept quiet, out of respect for him and the reputation he'd earned. As spring came, our bond only deepened. Michael had practically moved into my apartment, though we kept his place for when he needed to be close to the firehouse. Our worlds had merged, his of sirens and courage, mine of code and creativity, each one grounding the other. One evening, while he cooked dinner, insisting my culinary skills were a fire hazard, I finally shared an idea that had been taking shape in my mind. I've been thinking about developing an app, I said, watching his reaction. Something that helps firefighters track their exposure to harmful substances, like a digital health diary. Michael turned from the stove, instantly intrigued. That could be huge. We try to keep records, but it's tough during calls. You'd really do that? With your help, I said. You know the real challenges, I just know how to build the system. His eyes lit up. Let's do it. I'll talk to Cap about getting some input from the team. That project became our shared mission. We'd spend nights at the dining table, him describing real-life scenarios, me sketching out designs and writing code. It drew us even closer, blending our worlds in a way neither of us expected. One night, as we worked, Michael's phone rang. His expression shifted instantly. Bennett here. Yes, sir. I understand. I'll be there in 20. What's wrong? I asked as he started gathering his gear. Major warehouse fire in South Boston. They're calling in extra units. He pulled on his boots, already in motion. Could be a long night. I helped him collect his things, trying to quiet the knot of fear that always came when he got a call like this. At the door, he turned and kissed me deeply. I love you, he said. Don't wait up. But of course I did. I stayed up all night, working on the app to distract myself, glancing at my phone every few minutes. Around 3 a.m., I finally heard his key in the lock. He looked exhausted, face smudged with soot despite his gear. Without a word, he came straight into my arms. Rough one? I whispered. He nodded against my shoulder. Lost the building, but everyone got out. He pulled back, eyes tired but full of warmth. Being a firefighter's partner isn't easy, huh? Being away from you isn't easy, I said. But knowing you're out there helping people, it makes me proud to be yours. He smiled, soft and genuine. Move in with me. Officially, I mean. Let's find a place together, somewhere between your office and the firehouse. The question caught me off guard, but my answer came instantly. Yes. The next few weeks were a blur of apartment hunting, furniture shopping, and weaving our lives even tighter together. We finally found a beautiful 2-bedroom in Back Bay, enough room for my home office and space for Michael's firefighting gear. Moving day felt like a celebration of everything we'd built. Michael's crew showed up first, turning heavy furniture into light work, while my tech friends followed, more skilled with routers than wrenches, but just as eager to help. Watching them laugh, work, and blend together filled me with a quiet joy. This was our family now. Firefighters and software developers, united by love. That evening, surrounded by half-opened boxes, Michael pulled me down beside him on our new couch, the first thing we'd chosen together. "What are you thinking?" he asked, catching my faraway look. "Just how far we've come since that fire drill," I murmured, leaning against him. He laughed, the sound low and warm. "You know, I went back to the firehouse that day and told Dave I'd met someone special. He said I was crazy, that I was letting a pretty face cloud my judgment about fire safety." "Pretty face, huh?" I teased. "Very pretty," he grinned, kissing my forehead. "But it was your heart that made me fall in love." The launch of our Firefighter safety app became more than a milestone. It changed everything. What started as a small project between two people in love turned into something the entire department wanted to be part of. The Boston Fire Department adopted it for testing, and soon other cities followed. When Michael and I stood together on stage at the Regional Firefighters Conference, him explaining the features, me watching from the side, I'd never felt prouder. There he was, the man I loved, bridging two worlds and making his dangerous job a little safer. Later, at the reception, I overheard two older firefighters talking. "Bennett's really made something of himself," one said. "Never thought I'd see one of ours working with tech guys. But he and that partner of his, they've built something special." "Partner?" the other asked. "Yeah, they're together." "Got a problem with that?" "Nah, times are changing. Anyone who helps keep our people safe is family." Michael slipped beside me, his hand finding mine. "Eavesdropping again?" he whispered, smiling. "Just appreciating how far we've come," I whispered back. That night, he was quieter than usual. I noticed how often his hand brushed the pocket of his jeans, checking something. "Everything okay?" I asked softly. He took a deep breath, eyes glinting. "More than okay." He reached into his jeans and pulled out a small box. My heart stopped. "James Cooper," he began, dropping to one knee beside the bed. "You changed my life that day in the stairwell. You've stood by me through every fire, every fear, and built something that's saving lives. You showed me that being true to myself doesn't make me less of a firefighter, it makes me better. You gave me the courage to love openly, to live proudly. I promise to protect and cherish you always, to face whatever fires life throws at us, together." He opened the box, 2 matching platinum bands. "Will you marry me?" Tears blurred my vision as I pulled him into a kiss. "Yes," I whispered against his lips. 1,000 times yes. The next morning, Michael wore his ring to work. The reaction was everything. His crew threw an impromptu celebration, chili, laughter, and more beer than the station could handle. "About time," Dave shouted, clapping him on the back. "When's the wedding?" We set the date for spring, a ceremony in the garden of an old firehouse turned event space. It felt right. Traditional yet modern. Just like us, planning wasn't easy. My parents were supportive, but still adjusting. Michael's mom was overjoyed, but his father, a retired fire captain, stayed reserved. "He'll come around," Michael promised after a tense dinner. "I caught him showing your app to his old crew last week." Winter passed in a blur of work and wedding prep. The app gained national attention. I even took a leave from my job to expand it. Michael's promotion to lieutenant brought steadier hours and more pride. Then one snowy night, 2 months before the wedding, there was a knock at our door. It was his father. Michael was on shift, so I let him in, unsure what to expect. "James," he said, settling onto the couch, "I owe you an apology." I sat across from him, stunned. "When Michael told me about you, I wasn't worried because you're a man," he said quietly. "I was worried you wouldn't understand this life, the danger, the brotherhood. But I was wrong. You haven't just understood it. You've made it better. That app of yours is going to save lives." Tears stung my eyes. "Thank you, sir." "That means a lot," he smiled gently. "Call me John, and I'd be honored to walk you down the aisle, alongside your father." When Michael came home the next morning and I told him, he pulled me into a tight embrace, his voice soft against my ear. "See," he whispered. "Told you he'd come around." The morning of our wedding dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect spring, day that feels made for new beginnings. The old firehouse had been transformed into something magical. White flowers and soft lights lined the garden, while small touches of fire service tradition blended beautifully with the decor. I stood in what used to be an officer's quarters, now a makeshift dressing room, adjusting my navy blue suit. My father and John, Michael's father, were with me helping with last-minute details. "Nervous?" my father asked with a grin. "A little," I admitted, but in the best way. John rested a steady hand on my shoulder. "In all my years of service," he said warmly, "I've never seen two people more right for each other. You balance one another perfectly." When it was time, both fathers walked me down the aisle. As I stepped into the garden, I saw Michael waiting, and for a moment, the world stopped. He stood tall in his dress uniform, medals glinting in the sunlight, but it was his smile, bright, proud, full of love, that took my breath away. Behind him stood his crew in their formal uniforms, while my team from the tech world filled the other side. Two worlds side by side, perfectly united. Dave, the same captain who'd been with us since the start, had insisted on becoming ordained just to officiate our wedding. "Love," he began, "is like fire. It needs to be tended carefully, fed regularly, and respected always. But when you care for it right, it gives light, warmth, and strength to everything it touches. I've seen these two men tend their fire with care and courage, and what they've built is something rare and lasting." Michael's vows brought tears to my eyes. "James," he said, voice steady despite the emotion behind it, "you once ran back into a burning building to save your work, and in doing so, you saved me. You showed me that being true to myself doesn't make me less of a firefighter, it makes me a better one. You've given me courage, honesty, and love. I promise to protect and cherish you, to face every fire life brings us, and never take for granted the miracle of finding you." When it was my turn, I could barely keep my voice steady. "Michael," I said, "you came into my life like a hero from a story. But you showed me that real heroism isn't about running into flames. It's about having the courage to love completely, to be open and kind even when it's hard. You've taught me that true strength comes in many forms, and that the strongest bonds are forged in the hottest fires. I promise to stand beside you always, to love you more deeply with every passing day." The reception that followed was a celebration like no other. The main hall still had its gleaming brass fire pole in the center, and Michael's crew had insisted on cooking the food themselves. The mix of firefighters and tech developers filled the room with laughter, music, and warmth, two families merging into one. When Michael pulled me close for our first dance to Can't Help Falling in Love, everything else disappeared. "Happy?" he whispered. "Perfect," I said, resting my head against his shoulder. Later that night, we slipped out into the garden under a sky full of stars. Michael draped his dress jacket over my shoulders, just like he had on our very first date. "You know," he said softly, "I used to think being a firefighter meant fitting a certain mold. But then I met you. You taught me that being myself, being with you, makes me better at everything, including my job." I smiled, touching his hand. "We make a good team, the best," he said, "and we're just getting started." A year later, our lives had changed in ways we'd never imagined. Our app was now used by fire departments across the country. Michael had been promoted to captain, his station proudly flying a rainbow flag beside the department colors. I'd started my own company developing safety tech for first responders, with Michael as my chief safety advisor. Life wasn't always easy. His job still came with risks, and balancing our careers took constant communication and trust. But through it all, we faced everything together. Sometimes, when I visited him at the firehouse, I'd catch him showing new recruits the framed photo from our wedding day that hung in his office. "See that?" he'd say with a smile. "That's my husband. He's the reason I'm a better firefighter, and a better man." Every time I heard those words, I fell in love with him all over again. Our story might not be conventional, but it's ours. A reminder that love knows no boundaries. Courage takes many forms, and the most beautiful things often rise from the most unexpected moments. As Michael always says, Love, like fire, needs respect, dedication, and care. But when you get it right, it lights up your whole world.